Okay, we're going to do just a quick video on the slope formula. So make sure you have your lesson 2 packet and find the page that has slope formula. Now, this really isn't anything crazy. There's nothing new. Before we start focusing on there's a name for that second y minus first y over second x minus first x, I wanted you to just get comfortable with the other activities. So now you do need to know slope formula. And what we're going to do this, we're going to add to the vocab. Okay, so what I want you to do in your vocabulary page is I want you to add a word, slope formula. Now that y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 that I wrote over and over in your packet, that is the slope formula. If you're given 2 points, you can plug those 2 points into this formula and determine the slope. You don't need to draw a graph, you don't need to have a table. As long as you have just 2 points, you can figure the slope out. Okay? Put like a little bubble or highlight scribbling around this little thought. It does not matter which point you define as x1, y1 and x2, y2. However, the coordinates of both points must be used in the same order. And that's what I talked about over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you want to say y1 minus y2, that's totally fine. The only thing is, for the x's, you have to take the first x and subtract it from the second x, or subtract the second x from it. So you have to have the same order. If you start with the first y up top, you got to start with the first x on the bottom. Okay? What you will see universally used is the second y minus the first y. Okay, let's take a look at an example. Number 4. Find the slope of the line that passes through r12 and s negative 4, 3. Okay, we have the slope formula here. If we look at our second step, they took, second step they took 3 minus 2. So the second y minus the first y. For our change in x, since we started with the second y, we have to start with the second x, which was negative 4, minus the first x, which is 1. Now this is where your positive and negative skills come into play. Because if you have a trouble with positive and negative adding and subtracting, this is going to get you into some trouble here. If you need to add the opposite, do it. If I need to rewrite this as negative 4 plus negative 1, you do it. Okay, so again, I want you to focus right here. 4 minus 1, negative 4 minus 1 might be tricky for some people. So if you add the opposite, negative 4 plus negative 1 makes it very easy to see that it's negative 5. Okay, so keep that in mind, please. Now we ended up with 1 over negative 5 or negative 1/5. Same thing. Okay. If we check our little side note here, to check example 4, let x1 and y1 equal negative 4, 3, and x2 and y2 equal 1 over 2, or 1 and 2. Then find the slope. Okay, so basically what they're saying is reverse the order. So instead of the second minus the first, do the first minus the second. So they're saying 2 minus 3. So I'll take my first x, 1, minus the second x, negative 4. Let me add the opposite, and you end up with negative 1 over positive 5, which is actually the same. Okay, so it's all they're telling you to do in this little side note. More proof that the order does not matter as long as whatever you start with on your y's, you start with that on your x's. Okay, so let's try it ourselves. Let's try D. I'll take the second y minus the first y. Okay, I'll color code this for you actually, just like they did. So I'll take second y minus the first y. And then in red, I will take the second x minus the first x. And we end up with 1 over 3. If we'd done it the other direction, 2 minus 3 over 2 minus 5, I would have gotten negative 1 over negative 3, which equals positive 1/3. Same thing. I want you to try E and see if you get the same thing I do. All right, you should have gotten for E 1/2. Now, a little side note, there are a lot of negatives happening here. I added the opposite. Okay, in case you forgot what that is, it's changing subtraction to addition and finding the opposite of the next number. Come see me if you're unsure about that. Okay, so now I want you to go to the guided practice. Okay, and on the guided practice, we're going to look at 4, 5, and 6. Now what I want you to do is I want you to pause the guided practice. I want you to try 4 and 5 on your own, unpause, and you'll see the answers pop up. For number 6, it says, in any linear relationship, explain why the slope is always the same. What they mean is, if you remember, if you go back in this packet to one of the first examples where there's a graph, I do the little stair steps, and my stair step was always up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Why does that happen? Why does, think about what the slope, it has a rise over run. Why is it always going to be the same if it's a straight line? So just in your own words, think about how you can answer that question. So hit pause, check with 4 and 5, and then go to the next activity to see which practice problems you need to do. And that's it. Okay, so check your work compared to mine. A side note, adding the opposite, just a reminder, 4 minus negative 2 becomes 4 plus positive 2. 5 minus negative 3 becomes 5 plus positive 3. Negative 3 minus 5 in my second problem here. Negative 3 minus 5 becomes negative 3 plus negative 5. 3 minus negative 6 becomes 3 plus positive 6. That will help you with your arithmetic on these problems. And then you do 6 by yourself.